Thank you, computer.
I do the same thing. I send her my little.
Okay, this is the Sprint114 review. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to do the sprint statistics. Harpreet's going to do the UI. Adam on providers, Drew on automate, Joe V on platform, Alberto API, Mike Shriver on QE, and Suyog documentation. So we had 234 PRs merged in the last 2 weeks, and as you can see, half of them are in these three repos. All right, and again, we had 357 issues that are, I should say, we had 295 opened, 234 merged, and we dropped in the total number still open, which is a good thing. And these are the PRs by label. And again, a PR can have multiple labels, so that's why it's maybe a little, sometimes, again, it'll show up in this result. Next slide, and over to Harpreet.
Hi, everyone. Total of 56 UI PRs were merged across all the UI repos this sprint. Out of that, there were 8 enhancements, 27 bugs, and so on. Some of the main enhancements are listed here. So on the V2V side, as we are planning on adding more submenus under migrations menu, we moved the migration menu out of the compute top level menu to have its own top level menu now. And on the service details screen, that was updated to show lifecycle state of a service. I think that Tina will go over that in her automate slides. Description text field on the tag category form was, the size of the description field was increased. It used to be 50 characters, and now it's increased to 255 characters. And for the rest of the enhancement, I'll go over with the screenshots. So next slide, please. So when a user has a replication configured on their MIQ appliance and they go to the login screen, they should now see the region information, whether they are on a remote region or a global region. So you can see that on the slides on the right side. Also, when on a global region, on the VM summary screen, we had a link to open a VM in its region. So this link has been changed to be a button for better accessibility. This also involves add of a new out-of-the-box user role, EVM role user global region that has access to specific tasks that a user can only perform when they are on a global region. Next slide, please. A change was made so that the top level menu items can now be added through advanced config section. So in the left screenshot, you can see I have a snippet of how you can add a menu. And on the right side, it shows the custom item 1 and custom item 2 top level menus. And also you can only add the top level menus. You cannot have sections under that. Also, in order to add a top level menu, you have to have an existing valid RBAC feature identifier in the product. So there are some details in the PR on how to add one of those. Next slide, please. In the Configuration Explorer, workers screen was reworked to use data-driven React forms and to consume API through REST data. Some of the inconsistencies that we used to have on that screen were fixed, like when you go to that screen the very first time, the default values sometimes were not being set to the initial values properly. So that was fixed, and another major change on the screen is made to show customized values in the drop-downs. So as you can see on the right, if a user had a customized value in the advanced settings, that was not being shown in the drop-downs properly. We used to show either like 200 MB as a selected value or first value that was in the drop-down. But now you can we show the custom value in the drop-down as selected value. So user can change it if they want to. Next slide, please. And to be able to control over which zone the service-related automate methods or tasks should run in, a zone selection dropdown was added to catalog item bundles and also to the automate tasks schedule editors and their detail screen. And next slide, please. That's all I have for the UI. On to Adam.
Thanks, Harpreet. So on the VMware side, we added the ability to collect license and extension information about the vCenter. This will tell you, for example, if extensions like NSX are enabled on the vCenter, which will help out V2V be able to tell if they're able to do migrations of certain VMs. We also added a tool to purge archived data stores. So data stores similar to VMs and hosts, when they're removed from the provider, we don't actually delete them from the database. We keep them around so that you can have the historical information. This isn't typically a problem with data stores building up because they don't get deleted very often, but some users had a tool which created and deleted ephemeral data stores really quickly. So they were having thousands of archived data stores and there wasn't a tool to purge them like there is for VMs. And so we just added a tool to do that for data stores as well. Next slide. On the Redfish side, they're working on allowing firmware updates to physical servers based on custom registries. So that basically it's a web server that maintains a list of all the firmware binaries available. So they added the modeling of registries and firmware binaries in this sprint. And Overt added the implementation of provisioning VMs. Thin disks isn't exactly correct. That's what the PR said, but it actually is essentially a linked clone on VMware where the VM that you're provisioning. What's that? So the VM you're provisioning is dependent on the template, and only writes are added to the VM. So they added that feature. So they called it dependent versus independent disks on Overt. So now you can select that option when provisioning. And next slide, over to Drew, I think.
Thanks, Adam. So I'm actually not going to be talking about UI changes today because I assumed erroneously that Harpreet would. Sorry about that. We have an addition to our ongoing service lifecycle improvements that was done by Lucy. We have a new mixin, the lifecycle mixin, that handles update lifecycle state, which is an overarching state designator for services. We also are now we have support for handling of special passwords in dialogues. So before this change, service provisioning did not add encrypted password to the expected fields, but we have new password fields. There are 4 of them now that end up in the options hash of the provision request. So you can now use the out-of-the-box customization templates effectively. We removed a 6-year-old connection release from MIQ AE method. We had been previously releasing connections in threads that were owned by other test threads inside of the engine. And one of these was causing some issues with a recent Rails upgrade. We also have, Jason, I think, did one of our plugin common methods is now a class method. And the last 2 are just some retire subtask changes for bugs that were involved with service retirement. On to, oh wait, sorry. I'm going to abdicate the platform now to Joe V.
Very good, Drew. Thank you. Okay, so this sprint saw 28 PRs merged in the platform space. Starting with bugs, Keenan fixed a bug that impacted viewing some virtual attributes in both views and reports. Keenan also fixed a few minor bugs and deprecation warnings. Nick C addressed an update migration bug by not syncing the schema migration RAN table when adding it. And Yuri fixed an issue impacting the ability to duplicate dashboards in the UI. He did this by keeping widgets when cloning the dashboard. Next slide, please. So all these are actually a collection of enhancements for to the foundation of the embedded Ansible project that Nick C and Nick L contributed to. I'm not going to talk about each individually. They're all just lower level foundation details. You can click the links and read about them if you want to. Next slide, please. So for other enhancements, Adam actually in the last sprint, but we didn't catch it until this one. Thanks for pointing that out, Adam. Had made a contribution to allow systemd to be used to manage workers. It's pretty cool. Keenan made an enhancement to speed up loading of the product features cache. Keenan, Johar, and Nikal also contributed to the ongoing improvement of our test infrastructure. Next slide, please. And lastly, Johar continued the Rails version upgrade with Keenan also pitching in on this effort. That's it to me. For me, I'll hand it over to Alberto to talk about biting my tongue.
Thank you, Joe. So for the API, we have two enhancements made by David H. So these two enhancements were needed to for the API-driven VM reconfigure screen, where there was a need to display related CD-ROMs, and the next slide, the disks of VMs. So basically, it's exposing the CD-ROM sub-collection for VMs. You can get all the related CD-ROMs of a specific VMs or a particular CD-ROM of one. Next slide, please. And similarly here, like I mentioned, there was CD-ROMs and also disks, also by David H., and exposing the sub-collection disks off of VM resources. And that's it for the rest. Next slide.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So QE focused heavily on test automation fixes and writing new tests, automating existing manual tests for the Ivanchuk release. We tagged this release 17.53.0 if you'd like to see a PR summary. Some noteworthy updates made were support for database table views in our database client. That was by Yevgen. Justin Watts fixed our smoke tests for us. John Dupuy added a new MIQ BZ command, which will allow us to report and automate around our BZ markers. Nikhil Dehandre updated our log validator to accept pattern matches and to count the number of pattern matches within the logs. Angelina Nikiforova updated our tagging widgets to handle the new React components. And our conversion host modeling and tests were updated for V2V by Shweta. And that's all for me. On to Suyog for documentation.
Hi, there were 8 PRs merged in the sprint, of which 7 were bugs and 1 was enhancement. So Jovi added some usage examples with curl, Ruby, and Python in the REST API documentation. And we've added some missing procedures about creating and deleting flavors and downloading key pairs in the managing infra and inventory guide. And that's it for documentation.
Okay, that's the end of Sprint 114. The next sprint is 115 in 2 weeks. See you on July 5th to July 10th. Thank you.